After understanding parameters, so we need to know about configuring child routes. Child routes. Actually, the intention of child route is nothing but they are used to define navigation within the component. So usually routes by default handle navigation uh, between components components. So child routes are used to define navigation within the component within the component. They are used to define navigation within the component actually. So it configures a route within the current route. That means a route collection can be defined. A collection can be maintained within the existing route, within the context of existing route. That is what actually child route. So the child routes are defined by using children collection, defined by using children collection. So we have to use a children collection for defining the child routes. So that means technically the basic syntax, how it actually looks like is usually the syntax will be in this way. So generally we define a constant of routes. So it is of type routes, and we have to configure the path. Actually, we have to define the path, and this path refers to the parent, and usually it will have a component. So the parent component. So we have to define the parent component, and this will have an attribute called children. Children is again a collection. So in that route, children is again configured as a collection. It is defined as a collection, right? And this collection contains again routes. So this is the first route configuration here. Yeah, this children is actually a member of this parent. It is a member of that parent. Under that, we can maintain it. So, and every child route contains again same, it will have a path, and that is the child, and the component is child component. That's how we configure, we define. So by using children, we can add this. Now, when you are configuring the child routes that is defined with this children, now navigation, so we need within the context. So redirection within the component is configured by using actually, so if you are navigating, then route is enough. So if you are handling redirections, then how you define redirection actually is, so technically redirection within component, so is configured by using navigate method, is defined by using navigate method of router module. In many interviews, they ask this question also, how we handle redirection. Remember two things, navigation and redirection have a slight uh, difference actually. What is actually navigation? Navigation is explicitly user chooses where to go. Explicitly user chooses where to go. That means user selects where to navigate, where to go. User chooses that explicitly. So that is what actually the navigation, right? So user will choose where to go. But technically, redirection is, it is a technique, so which automatically, implicitly navigates the user depending on the situation and state. As per the situation and state, it will redirect. How it usually redirects actually? So it can usually redirect. Generally, it can redirect. So by using this navigate method, so that we can configure using a navigate method, we can configure. So how actually this navigate method is used syntactically? So how the navigate method is used? Because while defining the child components, so redirection should be configured. And you can do in this way. So what you have to do is, we have to create a router object. Actually, we have to create a router object. It is of type router module. It is of type router module. Means it is of type router. You have to create a router object which is of type router actually. So once you defined the router, so that means not module type, it is a class type. It is derived from router. So that means it is derived from router, which actually comes from router module. Okay. And what happens here is we can use this dot router dot navigate as a method. This navigate method so uses the path. That means it have some values. Values are nothing but, so it will have a path, to which path to navigate, and parameters. Do you want to pass any parameters? That means, is that path expecting any parameters? If expecting parameters, you can pass the parameter. And very important is, it should also define an object that specifies the navigation is a new location or within the current route. If navigation is to a new location, then you don't need to define anything. If it is within the current route, then we have to use an attribute relative to this dot route. Relative to this dot route indicates that this navigation is not to a new location. That means this path, don't look for this path in a new location. Look for this path in the current route. That means in the current parent route. Relative to this route indicates that, so here relative to this route, this dot route, actually relative to this route indicates that, specifies navigation. So within the parent context, within the parent, specifies navigation within the parent. That's what actually this relative to is. That means it will not set a new path. It will use within that. That is how generally we define the child routes. Let's keep this in example now. Let's keep this in example. So how we can configure this in our example? So what are the changes we need to do that? Child routes, how do we define? Actually, so how you configure the child routes? So suppose let's go to the design. First, let's access that. This is our application. And in this, I click on categories. Categories will come. And I select categories. It will get the list of all those categories. Now here, so I am selecting. So back to categories, it will get back to the categories. That's what the approach we have designed actually. Now here, what should happen is, you see our current URL, categories/1. That means electronic products are displayed. Now here, I want one more navigation. I need to configure another navigation. When user clicks on that product, more details about the product should come. More details about the product should come, like product photo, product description, something. More details about the product should display. And it should display, it should display along with same content it should display. That means this content should be there. Along with that content, description should come. Then how you manage that, how you can handle that. That means this path contains a child path again. It contains a child path where we can show the details actually. Details of that particular product can be defined. So that's what important is, right? Let's see that how we can manage that, how we can configure and do. For that, I will go to the data. So in the data service, and for every product, some more details I will add here. Let's make sure that we have some assets here. Okay, we have some assets. Means images are there. Okay, here I am adding some more features, some more attributes like photo. And it is from assets like this is a speaker, like speaker.jpg. And here we have description. And this is like something about JBL speaker and its features. And features, its features, something about JBL speaker and its features. Now the same thing should happen for all of them. That means I will copy that, right. And for every product, additionally, we are adding a photo. And additionally, we are adding a photo. So this is earpods. So earpods and description, something about some earpods. Apple. So Apple earpods, something like this. Okay, something like this we define. So something like earpods, okay. And its features. Same I will give here relative to what images I am having. And here, so shoe. Let's change the image to shoe.jpg. So shoe.jpg and description something about Nike casuals. Okay. So there can be several description details and all. And here we define something about Lee boots. So that's right. Okay. These are all the details we have configured and shoe1.jpg. So do we have those assets? We can check that. Yeah, fine. This is the general thing we are having. means I added some more details into the product. In the products, I added some more details there. Okay, the next step, what we are doing is we are configuring a new component which can show these details. So let's add a new component to show the details. So let's add a new component to show the details. Okay, so ng generate component and the product details. Skip test. Okay, product details component will display the details. Fine. Now, when this product details should come, so this product details should have a path. So our intention is, so when user clicks under this categories 1 on the product, the details should come. The details should come. That means usually what we are doing is, so for this path, where is this path observed? So go to routing module. So in the routing module, yeah, in the routing module, you see this is the path where we are displaying the category electronics. So that is the actual path currently. In that path, we need to configure another path. In that, we need to configure another path. Because in this location, we want again a child path. Then what we want, navigation within this path, some more. Then here I'm adding, in this path I'm adding. So in that path we are adding a collection. So a children, and children is an array. And children array, so is again a set of path objects. And the path this time, it will be in the children, it will be like details. Details of which product? The product ID should be passed here. That means details of which product? Because you need to display the details of JBL speaker. Then what is the ID of that JBL speaker? That means this details is expecting an parameter ID. This time it is product ID. Okay, we need to pass that product ID as parameter. And which component to display? So we have to display the component called, so product details. Product details component should come. The product details component should come. The product details component should come. This is the child path. So, and very important is, so we have to configure a UI for this, for handling the navigation. So that means this is the main path. In that we have configured the children. And there we mentioned that the details ID will get the details of that particular product. Product details component will come. Now what we have to do is, here, we need to first design some option here. For handling the navigation in a correct way, we need to design some option here. So that means what we can do is, here, we can keep, let's go to this location. That is the location here. This is products list actually. So products list is displaying the list of all products. You see, this is products list component. That means categories / ID is getting products list component. In that we need a child path. So go to that products list component HTML. In the products list component HTML, what we are doing is, so here, so this is the navigation here happening here. What we will do is this item name, so or beside that item name, just here we will show, so another header, so view details. view details. That is another header defined there. That means view details will come. And as the last item, as the last cell, in the last cell, we will keep a button. So we will keep a button. So this button should have a class as BTN, and BTN, we can get this as a link. That means it will show like a link button. So it will display like a link button. And in this button, so I will just give the word. In this button, I will just give the word as details. Details. That means that for every option, there will be that details link there. So there will be the details link. Actually, that is not link, that is button. On this button click, I need to get the details and show below this or beside it anywhere according to your requirement. So where you want to display that. So suppose in the body section, so in the table body, we are displaying all the information. This is all the table we are having. Now what I will do is all this, I will keep in, let's cut this. All this I will keep in a div. So class as row, and I am configuring the row, and div. So this is class as some call some 3. So I added this all here, and we have a div some class as so call some 3, and this is like a call some 6 or 7, something like this. Okay, 6 call 5 or call 6, because we have some data to display. So, and here we have call 6. Usually the display is like this. Actually, the display is like this. And our intention is, so beside this, I want to show the details. That means this is the column. So where I want to view the details of that product. Then what we will do is, here we will create a router outlet here. That means within that, again a navigation will be there. That means when user clicks on details button, I need to create a dynamic navigation that should get me the target and display beside it. That means on the button click of details, I need to navigate. That means I need to redirect. I need to redirect to product details and show the product details here. That means in the same component, it should be displayed. That means we have to write a click event. On the click event, we need to navigate to the details and get the details and display the details. So what we need to do? We have to write a method in the products list component. We need to write a method for accessing the details. That means I will create a method and I will just define the method as a show details, some get details, or say details click. When details click, what should happen? It should navigate to the details component. It should navigate to the details component and it should pass that current product ID. When I click on details, this product ID should be passed into the details component. Then how you will send this product details on this button click? So details click. So on the button click, so we will write on click. It has to get details click. Into that, you can pass that item which contains all product details. And we can collect that item. So here we can collect the item. Yeah. Now this item can access the product ID. It can access the product ID, which you can pass into the product details component. That means from here we need to navigate. From here we need to navigate to the details path. So that means we need to navigate to this detail path and pass a ID into that because it is expecting ID. Then how do we dynamically navigate? For that we need one more object here. So private router. This is of type router module. It is from router module. Actually it is not router module. Actually it is of type router. It is of type router. Router comes from this router module. It comes from the router module, right? So from the router module, so that router is added. Okay. So that is router is coming from that router. So it is in the same Angular router option here we are having. Okay. So we don't need router module directly. That router class is required, which is coming from router module actually. So this router allows navigation. So how the navigation is defined? As I showed you in the syntax, this dot router dot navigate. Navigate, it requires the commands. So here we need to configure. So set of properties into this. It is expecting the path name. Path name is details. Okay, details. And that path is expecting a parameter. Parameter is current item product ID. So item dot product ID, that is the parameter. Okay, and this is not to set a new path. It should work relative to the current route. That means we have to use an object. This is navigation related additional attributes. This additional attributes indicates relative to this dot route. This dot route. Relative to this dot route indicates that it is the navigation within the current route. If you don't define this, then what it will do is it will set this as a new path. If it sets as a new path, then navigation will be wrong because it should be within the current path. Within the current path, it is relative to the current path. That's what we have to define. So now what happens is, you can observe here, when I click on details and you can see product details works, it is working. Right side you can see. Suppose I click on here footwear or electronics, electronic products will come. I click on details and details will come. I click on back to categories, I said footwear, footwear products will come, and details and product details is working. But here the key point is, that means we used a router outlet here. That means the navigation within the component and the result will be rendered here. And now what we have to do is, you observe carefully in the top now. So in the current path, you are passing another one. Now what you have to do is, from details you have to collect this parameter. So that is product ID. You have to search for that particular product ID. You have to search for that particular product ID and display the details of that product. That means we need to collect that in the product details and display. We have to collect that in the product details and display. Then how do we manage that? Means how we can access and how we can use that. That means we have to collect that parameter. We need to collect the parameter and use that parameter. So details is accessing that. So details of 3, details of 4, you can see the ID is changing. When you click on details, that ID is changing. That means details 3, 4, that ID is changing. So we need to collect that parameter and display the details here. We need to collect the parameter and display the details. How do we collect that parameter now? And where to display in product details? So let's go to the product details component. In the products details component, so in this product details component TS, here we need to collect the parameter. And how do we collect the parameter? And we need to search for that parameter in the products data. So in the constructor, we need two things. One is we need data coming from data service. So data coming from data service. Another one, we need activated route to collect the route parameter. That means we need to create private route and it is of type activated route. We have to get this activated route for route parameter. Okay. Now what we need to do is, so on initialization, we will create two parameters, properties. One is product ID. Product ID is initially empty because we are expecting it. Another one is so searched product. That means product details. That means searched product. Searched product. Searched product. So searched product. So again an array. It's an empty. Okay. Now important, it depends on how you are searching, right? You can use various options now. So that is an empty array. Now here the key point is I have to collect the product ID from the route parameter and store it here. How we can access? So that means here we are using this dot product ID is equal to, so this dot route dot snapshot, and here we are configuring param map and dot get, and which one to get, and we are accessing the ID. So that is ID, the parameter we need to collect. This time the ID that you are collecting is the details in the current route. We are configuring that. And how do we search for the product? Searched product is equal to, how do you search for the product which is matching with that ID? Of course, you can use different methods. That means actually, if it is not an array, so if it is an array, usually it is, suppose you remembered we learned about this dot data dot get products. It will get the list of all products. On this get products, I can apply the find function. Usually, you know that find is also same like filter, but it will return only one. That means X implies X dot, where product ID is matching with this dot product ID. It is matching with product ID. That means you know that find will get the first occurrence of value and return. It will get the first occurrence of value and return. So that means now searched product contains the data. Searched product contain the data. So if you want to display what is present inside this searched product, that means we need to just go to the product details HTML. In the products details HTML, suppose temporarily, I'm just giving here. So here I am defining just temporarily searched product dot, suppose I am calling product ID because it returns a product object which matches that. I'm using the product ID. In the conditions, you can see that when I click on that, it should get that product ID and display that. So once refresh, I go to electronics, I click on details, and it will get that product ID and show. It will get that product ID and display. That means which product ID we are using. So anything, I click on that and it will get that product ID and display. That means it is having that information, right? Product ID. This searched product by using find command. Why we are using find command? Because this time we need to find only one product. This time we need to find only one product. That's the reason we need to configure that. Now, important is once you searched for that product, we need to get the details of the product and display. So once you searched for the product, we need to get the details. Of course, you can display that now. That means what I can do here. So I can put a div. So, and I can put here a class. So class as card, I can put display card and a div. So here I define as class. So card image overlay, card image top. So, and here I am defining an image. So image is actually having an SRC source coming from searched product dot photo. That is the property from where it gets, right? And here I'm just defining a div and the class as card body. And here we are just displaying a paragraph. So where we can keep that searched product dot description. We have description, right? So that means what is the data we added? I forgot that. What is the data we added? That is description, right? Yeah. So description, I will keep that description. That means in a card style, the appearance is displayed for that. The photo and the options, height, width, we need to adjust and display the content there. So that means the image, right? Height, width. So I said suppose class as IMG thumbnail. Okay, it will get you that. So that is width. I will just keep it height, width adjusted. 100. Okay, 100. That will keep the content in this way. That will be better, right? It will keep the content in this way. And let's keep some header like, so here we are adding, so in the card, a heading, just I want to display. So that option like searched product dot name, I can just display that name and show that product name there. Right. That means usually you can display anywhere. So I am clicking on any electronics. I click on the details, then it should get me the details and display. So that means we are accessing that and we are configuring it and we are displaying it. That means we are having the navigation within the context. We are having the navigation within the context. Now, usually when you are defining the navigation within the context, here several more points we need to understand. Means how you can access the content and display. Access the content and display, because generally when you are loading so many things in that route, there can be another route again. In that route, there can be another route. You can add any levels of navigation you can configure. So, but the key point is generally we need to load only the content, because here all are loaded, everything is loaded. It's very complex and heavy for application. That is the reason generally, if it is very complex and heavy for application, generally what we do is we usually handle a mechanism called lazy loading. We handle a mechanism called lazy loading. Through lazy loading technique, so with the routes, we can load only the bundle that is required for the situation. Only the option here, right? How we can manage that? What is lazy loading? So we need to understand about that. So let's see how we can deal with that, how we can manage with that. Because the key point here is generally when you are choosing any option, then what happens is it is going to, you can do a lot of manipulations, show details, hide details. We can do a lot of options here. Now, one important thing, what you will see here, the problems mostly is when I open this, inspect that element and look at the components related options here. You can see this will display all the components and all the components related content. Every time it will display all the components related content and all the component related details every time. Everything. So this will be a very important problem that you will face, especially when you are configuring the combinations, like multiple routes are defined, then you will face the problems. So due to this, what happens is, technically what happens is, I will show you that option, like, so that we can load only the content that is required for that situation. And to implement that, so we have to use the option called, lazy routing. The lazy routes, we can add lazy routes. And not only this, there is another technique of configuring actually. What is another technique of configuring? So, and how do we define the technique? Generally, see, people call this lazy routing. Opposite to the lazy route, we have the option called, opposite to that lazy route, we have an option called eager loading, lazy loading and eager loading. Now, when you are, many times people ask this question, like, so first point in the navigation we are using, I used as a button, right? I used as a button. Now, instead of button, I showed you through button navigation. So if I'm not using a button, if I'm using like a link, for example, I will go to the products list, just for your understanding sake, in the same cell. So I will add one more option here, anchor. So this is, so details, link, just for your understanding sake. This is details link. That means we are configuring, so this details link and defining the details link. Now, usually this is another option, details link. Now, important is when user clicks on this details link, it has to navigate to the child path and it should display the child path. That means it should go to the child path and it should display the child path. That means how you can navigate that, means how we can handle the navigation. Actually, can you give any directly router link, so which will handle the navigation? Use any router link that uses the navigation. That is one important point to understand. That means what happens if I give router link here? Generally, how you give the router link, let's go. And what we do is we will configure this as a router link. And this router link has to navigate to a specific path. That means we need to configure to a specific path. And what should be the path now? So that means we are configuring a router link, the path. So generally what happens here is when you define this, this have to come. That means we need to get to this, where is the routing module? Yeah, app routing module. You have to get to this location. That means we need to pass that value and configure that. Now see what happens now. So I defined that in the component. Yeah. Products list component. Where is it? Yeah. Here what we are doing is, so we are adding simply like it should navigate to details. It should navigate to details and it should pass the ID. Then we are defining here. So item dot product ID. Product ID. That means we are passing that particular product ID into the details option. Now this looks like a link. That looks like a link here. Now observe carefully here. This is also navigation. And I click on that here. So that have to navigate to that location. You see the URL is changing. Same like button link, how the URL is changing. This also changing. This also changing. That means this also changing that URL. That means route is happening here. But important is how you configure that this is relative to the current route. Of course, see here, I go to footwear and I click on this one now. Then it should get that and display. It's working fine. So it is working fine. That means you can directly use a router link. Router link. That means you can configure that router link. Then how you tell that it is relative to the current route? Of course, it is relative to the current route. Why? Because if you configure anything, so it is relative to the current. If you configure any router link with a specific location, then it will go into that location and access that location. That means it is going to that location and accessing that location here. So you see it is going to that location and accessing. That means it is working relative to this route on. Within that route, it is having that navigation. Within the route, it is having the navigation. So then important point is why we used that redirection technique. We use redirection technique because just we need to understand that not only through route link, dynamically also according to the situation, we can handle the navigation. For example, user submitted some username and password. So username and password, we can define username and password, but if username and password are successful, it is verified, then only it should redirect. Otherwise, it should not allow to redirect. In that case, how you will check such conditions? Because every time when so user wants to go to that particular path, we should not allow to go to that path. So then what generally we do is we collect the details. We can check a condition here. So when the details click, we can check the condition is satisfying or not. If the condition is satisfying, then we will allow to navigate. Because sometimes we use security, authorizations and authentications, we use security. Through the security, we need to manage the accessibility. Then dynamically, we need to verify so many things. We cannot directly give. That's the reason I showed you both techniques. That means you can handle the navigation through the router link. You can handle the navigation dynamically. That's depending on the situation, right? So depending on the situation, how you are handling the navigation. Usually when you are defining these routes, so many times you will see people are writing in different ways according to the requirement actually. That means suppose people write like slash. So people write like dot slash. These are the techniques. I yesterday showed you what is meant by that actually. That means this details and details, this is dot slash. That means it is going to categories. That means it will come one level back. So you see currently you are in this location dot slash. It will go one level back. And from categories, it will access the path. That means when I click on the details, you see it's not found because it is expecting that location one level back. That means if I defined simply like slash, so if I defined simply like slash, that means what does that means? This is also not found because what happens when I click on details? So then what it will do is it will remove this categories also and it will directly put details 3. If you have written the path in that way, you can do that, right? So that means when to use this slash, when to use this dot dot slash, depending on where your path is and from where you want to access that particular component. So that is very important. That's the reason many times this confusion comes, because you people go online, search for several examples, then you are very much confused. Your brain is a lot of confusion, with lot of confusions now, because you don't just follow what we teach, you follow so many things online. Then every situation based examples will be there that you have to concentrate first. That means according to that example, according to that path, what is required for that situation, they defined it. It doesn't mean that for your example, for your requirements, for your specifications, you have to write in that way. That will mislead the example actually. That's the reason you need to understand when to use them and how to use them. How do we configure them? If you are writing anything relative to current path, this is also in interviews, they will ask very much. Through a router link, if I am now navigating within the parent, then how you write the relative path? You just write the relative path without using any slash and dot dot slash. That will work as relative path. I hope everyone understood that. If you use dot dot slash, that is not relative to the path. It is coming outside that current path. If you use slash, it is coming outside all. So if you just define this, this is working relative to the path. How you define this? Through navigate method. We define this through navigate method by using an attribute called relative to this dot route. By defining the attribute relative to this dot route. In many interviews, this question is also asked, like how I can pass multiple parameters. Simple, if you want to pass multiple parameters, you can use an object, and through an object, you can pass multiple parameters. And you know how do we pass multiple parameters or object property key value references, or you can use an array inside the array which can pass multiple parameters. So that means item dot product ID. We can configure that. So we can add another parameter and define. It depends on the requirement. So initially we need to just pass only one parameter. So the item dot product ID, that is the parameter. So we can use both techniques. We can configure and use both techniques. Just you need to understand how to deal with. So in this example, I have done few changes. Now, one more important thing you have to know here is, how do we implement lazy loading of modules, routes? How to deal with lazy loading and why we need lazy loading? What is the intention of lazy loading in the routes? So it will improve the performance of the application. That is important to understand. So we will see that in one example, how to deal with this. So in the current example, we are continuing the same previous. So few changes we have done. That means this is an example for child routes. In this few changes we have done. So what are the changes we done? So those changes I will give you in a note. One more time, I'm showing an overview what changes we done. Carefully observe. What changes and what are the options we have done here? So simple is first point. So go to your data.service.ts, and in that data service, do some changes in the data because we need some details. So in the data service, so do some changes in the data. That means the get products method, I made some changes. So rest of example is already there with you. Already I given the example above, the complete example how to define. To this example, we are doing some modifications. That means go to this data service and make these changes. So add some more details into the data. Okay. After that, second, so we need to add a new component. So this component is ng generate component, product details. So product details component, we need to add a product details component. Okay. And this product details component should have the information I will tell you how we can keep that information. But another point is, so after the product details, so we need to configure another option. Okay. Yeah. After the product details, we need another option. That means what we have to do is, after adding that product details component, we need to go to, so routing module, go to app routing.module.ts. So in the app routing module, we need to add child routes. We need to configure the child routes. So in the app routing module, so we need to add the child routes. That means here in the categories ID path, we need to do these changes. So we need to keep these changes here. That means we added a child path called details/ID. And when user selects that, it will get to the product details and display. Product details and display, right? That is one option. Next, important. Now here one more option is, now after configuring this, so we need some changes to do in the product list component. That means we have to go to product list, products list dot component dot ts. In the products list component, we need to do some changes. I will give entire code, so it will be better. What changes I have done there? So some activated routes, we added parameter here. And another one is we have to go to products list dot component dot html. What I have done in this is, actually in the products list, so we done only one extra work. On details click, we are handling navigation to this path, And in the UI of products list UI, in the presentation, we added some extra presentation. Is nothing but, in the table we added view details, and a button, on button click, the details click will happen. And I added a router click that will navigate to that location, to show you both how through router, and result of this should be displayed in the same page in this column. Router outlet is the location where it will display that result. That means within the component, the target information will be displayed. Okay. And one more option we have to define here is, that is we have to go to product details dot component.ts. Here we need to search for the product based on the ID and display. For that, I am using the array find function to handle it. I am using the array find function. Through the find function, we are searching for the product. And we need to present it. Just for that, so we have to go to, so product details dot component dot html. And here we need to present the data. That means that is product details component. I designed a card style, so where we are displaying the details of that particular product. These are all the changes we have done for achieving the child routes. So configuring the child routes. Now, once we know how do we configure the child routes, now the important here we need to understand. So how you handle lazy routes, means how do we handle lazy loading? So what is the intention of lazy loading? Why we need lazy loading? What is the concept of lazy loading? Actually, lazy loading, I already told you in one occasion while learning about components, lazy loading of, I told you lazy loading of data. So that means the data is loaded only when it is required. With a virtual scroll, we learned about that. If you remember that we discussed in the components. This is loading the modules only when they are requested. All the modules should not be loaded. The modules must be loaded only when they are requested. That is what we need to handle here. And how we can manage that lazy routes, that we will see in the next session, right? Monday, we will continue with that, right? So you practice this. If you got any issues, right? If you got any issues, then We will discuss about that in the Monday session, right? Monday we will continue. And Monday, once you finish this